Welcome back to another episode of Do You Know Right Sports. As today, we're going to take a deep dive into our top 10 running backs for the 2021 NFL Fantasy Draft. Boys, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
No.
Awesome. So, we're going to start off with the number one pick. And today, as of right now, I have Christian McCaffrey, running back out of Carolina. Um, it's kind of hard to not have him as number one, depending, or if you just take into account the amount of targets he gets, along with catches and rushing attempts. He always seems to minimally have a touchdown in every single game he plays. And now with Sam Darnold at the helm as the quarterback, I think that'll be really helpful for him. Because if you look back to his time with the Jets, he threw to Le'Veon Bell a decent bit. He was actually the number two or three receiver for I think at least 1 year that Darnold and Bell played together. So I think that's a good look for McCaffrey as the number one running back for my list.
Yeah, so I'll have to agree with that. Christian McCaffrey is my number one running back. Even going back to last year with Teddy B under center, he was getting 6.33 targets a game, and that's with 2 games, him not playing the full hour. Um, he's getting 26 touches a game. That's absolutely absurd. There's no one that's going to catch the ball as much as him. Even Dalvin Cook, we think of him and Saquon Barkley as the next two pass catchers, and Kamara, but none of them even come close when it comes to total targets a game. CMC, as you said before, gets 1 to 2 touchdowns every single game. It's just unmatched. Everyone else is kind of sharing some red zone threats. Like Dalvin has Adam Thielen take a lot of the 1 yard touches. Like Aaron Jones has Devonta Adams stealing a lot of that work. Kamara even has Taysom Hill stealing that. He has nothing. Like Sam Darnold's not going to be taking QB sneaks in. They know they can trust CMC. He's a tough guy. Adam, what do you think?
It's consensus all around for us. Christian McCaffrey, number one. The offensive line's gotten a little bit better. You got Matt Paris, center, Greg Little, left tackle. They drafted Deontay Brown in the second round for some offensive line help. So they are getting some more help there so he can punch through the end zone better as a back. Also, they drafted a wide receiver in the second round, which is going to help get him open better in space. So all around consensus, you have to go Christian McCaffrey, number one.
I just have to see real quick as well. The injury concern isn't exactly his fault. If it was something where it was like the Leonard Fournette hamstring pulls that we dealt with like 2 years ago, it'd be different. But it's a high ankle sprain, and I think it was like a clavicle injury where he got hit. It's types of things that like any running back is going to get hurt from. It's not really like even Saquon Barkley, had a high ankle sprain and had to play through it. Kamara had one too, so I don't think that's a concern.
And we'll touch on those players later when we get to them. Um, so for the number two running back in terms of my list, I think all of us had the same one. We have Dalvin Cook out of Minnesota. Um, Similar to McCaffrey, except maybe doesn't get as many targets and catches as he does, but he's going to be a beast in the ground game. And Adam will get to it a little bit more, but they upgraded in the offensive line, especially specifically at left tackle with Darisaw in the first round. Um, the offense just runs through Cook. Kirk is not going to throw more than maybe 25, 30 times a game. So Cook is going to get his touches. The only problem is with his injury, but um, that shouldn't be too much of a problem as last year he played 14 games. So I don't see it being too big of an issue and holding him back from drafting him as your second running back. So I have Dalvin Cook. Dan, what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm gonna agree with that. Dalvin Cook is gonna get the second most amount of touches out of all these running backs here. I don't think Saquon's going to come back and steal that from him. Dalvin Cook is kind of always under the radar, not under the radar, but he's always outshined at the end of the season. 2 years ago, CMC having I think it was averaging 31 points per game to Dalvin's 28 points per game for most of the year. That's DraftKings scoring. So everyone was like all hyped up on CMC. And then last year, Derrick Henry finishing the season with 2,000 yards. He kind of took over and everyone kind of fell in love with him. But there was that point of the year where Dalvin Cook had, I think it was like 4 games in a row of like almost 40 fantasy points. It was something crazy. Um, and I think, he's averaging over 100 yards per game, 111 yards to be exact, on the ground. And his rushing yards per attempt, surprisingly, is 5, which is, compared to everyone else on the list for the amount of touches he gets, is actually pretty insane. Adam, what do you think?
I have to agree here. Think I had Dalvin Cook closer to McCaffrey than both of you guys, but just by a little bit. I love Dalvin Cook. I think he's going to be catching more as a receiving back. And I also like the way they do their line. They drafted Kirsten Darisaw, as Richie mentioned, in the first round. They also drafted Wyatt Davis in the third round. And they have Garrett Bradbury, Cleveland Urza, Brian O'Neill there. So it's a pretty solid offensive line that he can run. Um, I love Dalvin Cook all around. I think he's a total package. And like you said before, that offense is really going to run through him. And same thing with Christian McCaffrey. He's at least a one touchdown per game player. And I think we're going to see that time in and time out as long as he stays healthy. Um, but yeah, he's the focal point of the Minnesota Vikings.
And now we're gonna have our list differ a little bit here. With the third running back on my list, I have Saquon Barkley, running back out of New York for the Giants. I might be a little biased here because I am a Giants fan, but I love the upside Barkley brings to an offense. The last time, using stats from the 2018 season, the last time he was given an offense with a number one receiver and all 16 games to play, he went off, and he was the number one fantasy running back for that year for 2018 with, I believe it was 385.8 points. So that's exact. It's not belief. He's a monster on the ground. The offensive line, they didn't do a good job of upgrading it in the offseason, but I think it'll be solid. A bunch of second-year players who will hopefully take a step up under Coach Judge. He's a threat in the passing game. He's a threat in the running game, and that's the reason why I have him over players like Derrick Henry, just for the sole reason that he gets targets through the air. We'll see what happens with Daniel Jones. He probably won't throw him the ball as much as Eli used to, but maybe if we can scheme up ways to get Saquon the ball, I think that'd be really helpful. And he's explosive with the ball in his hand. So, Dan, who is your number 3 running back?
So for me, I also have Saquon Barkley. I think my only concern with him, and normally I don't like to take running backs this high when I have concerns with them, but to be honest, everyone after him I also have slight issues with. So I'm willing to give it a shot. It's his injury concern coming in with that ACL tear. I know he's going to play week 1. I'm just a little uncertain if he's going to get that upwards of 25 touches. I feel like we could see him get 15 to like 22 pretty easily, but I don't know if he has that full ceiling that Cook and McCaffrey have right now, that full workload. He definitely has the ability to do it. It's just probably going to be something happening later in the season. If you guys remember back to the year before when he had the high ankle sprain, he was pretty limited on that. But then towards the end of the season, he had 2 games where he broke out for like 40 and 50 fantasy points each because he was finally healthy again. So I think it's one of those plays where you're taking him for mainly the fantasy playoffs and weeks 6 through 17. The first few weeks you kind of just got to hope that he's either healthier than we expect or he gets his feet back under him, whatever. I don't think he's an injury concern either. Like an ACL tear happens to anybody. We saw Adrian Peterson come back from this pretty strongly. But yeah, Adam, what do you think?
I differ here a little bit at 3. I have Derrick Henry just because I have a little bit more questions about Saquon Barkley, which I'll get to in my next pick. But for me, I have Derrick Henry just because I think he's more of a solid bet of what you're going to get at a player. He had 25.5 touches per game last year. Only 2 of those, or just under 2 of those, I believe, are pass catches. I believe that can improve. I think that's like the weakness in Henry's game. And if he's a smart enough player, and I think he is, he's going to improve that in his game. And it's going to be more, at least a little bit more centered around the offense. But I also really like the offensive line, especially the left side with Taylor Lewan, Roger Stafford, and Ben Jones. Very solid left side of the line. And they also drafted Dylan Raduns in the second round, I believe, at right tackle. So they're looking to continue to upgrade that line. They know that's a strong suit of their team. Like Dalvin Cook, I feel like the entire Tennessee Titans offense runs through Derrick Henry, and we're going to see that again, along with just consistent fantasy value across the board like we saw last year. Maybe not a 2,000-yard season, but just a consistent number 1 back if you have a mid to late first round pick.
All right. And now for our 4th selection, I am very contrarian with this one. This is not going to be a popular opinion. I have Ezekiel Elliott taking the number 4 spot. The sole reason why he's there is because I believe Dak changes this offense compared to the other quarterbacks like Dalton or DiNucci, who were the quarterbacks last year for Dallas. I love Zeke on the ground. I believe Dallas's O-line is going to be a lot better than it was last year. They're going to get a few key pieces back from injury. Dallas, they lost Tyron Smith. They lost Cam Irving. I think Zach Martin was down for a few weeks. They're going to get all those guys back. Who knows if he'll have the ceiling that he had when he was a rookie with Travis Martin at center. But I think Zeke has a fair shot. He's used in the passing game. He's definitely used on the ground. Only question is Tony Pollard, if they get him more involved. But if Zeke's cooking and that offense is cooking, I don't see a reason why Zeke would get pulled out of the game. You have to look back, even not at last season, but the season before in 2019, he was a top 5 fantasy running back, and he was consensus number 1 for some people going back even just 2 drafts ago. So I like Zeke here at 4 over Henry, which again, not a popular opinion, but again, targets through the air is very important, and I believe Zeke has a chance to give you top 5 running back value. Dan, who's your number 4 player?
So I do have Derrick Henry at my number 4 spot. Derrick Henry is always on my, I guess, hate list just because I love pass catching running backs, and I feel like he has much less upside than a lot of other running backs. Like last season, he had this historical season, right? And I believe Richie said before he got outscored by Kamara, by I think it was like 40 or 50 points ish, like overall season long, which is like crazy to me. He played how many games? He played all 16 games, and still got outscored by 50 points by Kamara just because of how many catches he has. Granted, Kamara scores a lot of TDs too, but Derrick Henry just, he's going to be consistent. He's going to definitely be a top 5 back at the end of the year. It's just I can't take him any higher or lower than this. This is just kind of where he sits. I like people like Kamara and Zeke for more upside, but it's like they also have a lot more injury concern and stuff. Like Derrick Henry's never going to get really injured very much. Taylor Lewan's back. I'm excited for that too. But yeah, Adam, what do you got?
Here's where I take Saquon Barkley, and the reason why I have him a little bit lower than Derrick Henry. I love Saquon Barkley. I loved him coming out of Penn State. Still wish Philly was able to take him in that draft. Anyway, so I don't like the offensive line. Offensive line's a big concern, especially after that ACL tear. You have Andrew Thomas, who didn't play well in the last season he played. Will Hernandez is probably their best offensive lineman there. They didn't do anything really to help it as far as I can see looking at the depth chart. But he's still, offensive line plays halfway decent, and he doesn't get injured. He's a top probably 3 back. But just because of the slight injury concern, just because I really have no faith in that offensive line, and they didn't really, Dave Gettleman didn't get his hawk mollies this year to help that line like he's supposed to. So I take Saquon here at 4 instead of 3, but kind of interchangeable.
Yeah, I mean they're so close, right? It doesn't. Any of these guys can go off and be game changers for your fantasy team. Now to our number 5 running back, I have Derrick Henry here. There's no question that he is the best ground threat in the NFL. He has arguably the best chance to score in any given play from any part of the field. The only downside with him is on third downs. He gets subbed out for whoever the backup on Tennessee is from year to year. But it's really hard to take the upside of Henry when he can get you, as he's shown last year, 2,000 yards, 17 touchdowns on the ground. And he plays Houston twice a year, which is always nice. However, I do think Tennessee's going to take a step back this year. I don't know what it is about Tennessee. I just think their defense regressed. I don't like their corners yet. They're young in the secondary, so I think that's going to hurt them long term. I think they're going to be down a lot more, and they're going to need to pass more. So maybe this is a good year for AJ Brown or the receiver they drafted out of Ole Miss, Elijah Moore. But as far as Derrick Henry goes, outside the games where he's playing lesser competition, I don't see him having too crazy of a stat line. But of course, it's Derrick Henry. D. Hember comes in, always seems to be like the last quarter of either a game or a season, and he just blows our minds. Dan can attest to that one. He's plays fantasy, and Henry always seems to burn him. Most weeks he doesn't play him. So, Dan, who is your number 5 running back?
So number 5, I'll be the first to say it. I got Alvin Kamara. I mean, this one's tough. He could be like 5 or 8 for me. Really, it's really tough to see where he's going to go, depending on how they're going to use Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston. I do have all my faith, honestly, is in Sean Payton. I think he knows that Kamara is the best player on their team and that he's going to get him the ball no matter what. I can see some weird end of the year stat line where Kamara's like, honestly, maybe not too many yards or catches, but like 20 TDs. Like I could see some stupid line like that where he just does everything inside the red zone. I know Taysom's going to come in for a lot of that, but I just have faith in their ability to use Kamara. He's getting about 20 total attempts per game, 7 of those being through the air, and that's last year, even with a bunch of those terrible Taysom games. So it's not exactly an outlier or anything. I think the years before he finished with, I believe, it was like 84 and 82 receptions each year. So, I think if James is going to be the main quarterback in my eyes, so I think he will still have a lot of those receptions. But yeah, I think the touchdowns are going to be the main factor, just how it is kind of every year with Kamara. What do you think, Adam?
I agree with you. I have Alvin Kamara at number 5. I love Alvin Kamara. He has like the most insane balance I've ever seen on an athlete ever. It's fucking wild. Um, agree with you. I like the high touchdown with him because he's a Swiss Army knife. But you say Swiss Army knife, that's decent at everything, great at none. No, but he is great at just about everything that you want to put him at the field at. And I agree, Sean Payton is a smart coach. He's been around the league. I also really like the offensive line. You have Teron Armstead and Ryan Ramczyk at your tackles, solid tackles. And then you also have, Cesar Ruiz at your right guard, Andrew Speed at your left guard. That's a good offense line for him to run through. Is it amazing? No. Is it solid? Yeah. Is it better than the Giants? Yeah. But the quarterback situation is iffy. Obviously, you don't know how the offense is gonna run without Drew Brees there. But I think his attempts per game across the board might increase a little bit because he probably will be the focal point of that entire offense. But I do agree that depending on how the offense is played, he might go anywhere from 5 to even 10.
Definitely depends on just how you feel about him. I'll get into that more of that later. So with the number 6 running back off my list, off my board, I have running back Aaron Jones out of Green Bay. Now that let me start with this before I go into the detail. We're assuming Rodgers is still there. If Love is the quarterback, who knows? So we're gonna assume Rodgers is here. So with that being said, Williams isn't there. Jamal Williams has gone and left. He's now in Detroit. So I think this actually opens up a lot of holes for Jones, who lost some of his third down snaps due to Williams, who is a better run block or a pass blocker. He probably will be handcuffed at the goal line. I don't if that's even how you use that expression.
Yeah.
He'll lose touches at the goal line due to AJ Dillon and his beautiful thighs. But with that being said, Packers didn't do very much to address their weapons issue. So they still pretty much have the same receivers. They drafted, I think it was Amari Rodgers in the 3rd round, but I really don't see him being too much of a game changer, at least in this first year. Rodgers has got connection with Adams, and he knows Jones really well. So on top of that, the O-line in Green Bay is still very solid. They're getting Bakhtiari back from his ACL tear, hopefully sometime in the middle of the season. I'm not sure what his timetable is looking like, but they still have solid depth pieces to fill in for Bakhtiari, unless they're playing the Buccaneers. No shots fired. But I like Aaron Jones. He's got catching upside. He's got running upside. He's a guy who can break it. And I like him as my running back number 6. Dan, who is your next running back?
So for number 6, I got Zeke Elliott. I am also on the same, train of thought. I think, he had 21 touches per game last year, even with Ben DiNucci, throwing it away every other down. It was a terrible year. Like I think for Dallas as a whole, Amari, CeeDee, like everyone, you just got to scrap it. Like without Dak, it's a totally different team. And Zeke, surprisingly, he's getting like almost about 5 targets per game, and that was last year. The year before, I believe it was 6 or 7, which is pretty wild. You don't really expect those numbers out of him, but he really transformed from his first few years in the league, where he was strictly like a Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry type running back, into kind of a Saquon Barkley, all around athlete. Yeah, overall, I mean, how much more can you say? It's one of those things you're just expecting the positive regression from Dak to really help him with that. Adam, what do you got?
Here at number 6, I got to agree with Richie. I have Aaron Jones. I think he probably has some of the highest upside as you get a little bit later in the first round or early second round when it comes to your pick and need for a running back. As Richie mentioned before, the offensive line is solid. They also drafted 3 offensive linemen, in the second round, 4th round, and 6th round. Josh Myers being the one of note, but still you can have developmental pieces there. Like I said before, I think he has the most upside. Like, let's say Jordan Love did go down, then I feel like the offense might even run through Aaron Jones, and that could just be huge upside as it is. It's just going to be a lot of miles on him, absolutely. But could that ball always get through his hands, especially, short yardage situation, goal line situations, if they don't want to have to worry about AJ Dillon, they just want to trust Aaron Jones with it. So that could be something to look forward to there if Aaron Rodgers is there. And assuming he is there, that connection is still there. We've seen how good he could be before, and I feel like he can only get better. So I have Aaron Jones at 6 with very high upside.
And I'd like to point out, I always like to say this, Aaron Jones is Christian McCaffrey if Jones got McCaffrey's numbers, like number of touches. That's all I'm saying. I'll say that every time. All right, so moving down the list now, we're at number 7, and this is where I have Alvin Kamara, just for the sole reason of the unknown. I'm not sure what I'm getting from the Saints offense yet. It seems like, at least in my opinion, they're probably going to roll with Jameis and then sub in Taysom Hill at probably the worst time for Kamara's fantasy value, and that's going to be in the red zone and at the goal line. And on top of that, Drew Brees, I think, was a perfect quarterback for Kamara because he was at the twilight of his career. He was dumping it down more. Where Jameis is kind of just like, let's just throw it wherever. He doesn't have the same type of receiving talents as he had in Tampa Bay, but he's got Michael Thomas, Trey Smith. I believe they drafted a wide receiver. Can't remember who it was, but this is where I like Kamara, not so much as maybe like a top 5 player, but a little bit down the board because we know his upside. We know how crazy awesome his stats can be, like you guys said, with the crazy amount of touchdowns. It's just, will he get them this year? And will the Saints offense even be half as good as it has been in the past few years? It's just all the question marks that add up and make me question what Kamara's fantasy season is going to look like. But Dan, who's your next running back?
So my RB7 is Aaron Jones, like you guys mentioned it before. I really like the point you made about third downs. I didn't think too much about that until now, but without Williams there, I think it's totally worth giving up a few goal line carries to A.J. Dillon in order to get those third downs. I think he's a great pass catcher. He's been utilized, but in my opinion, 4.5 targets a game isn't quite enough. I think he could get to that Kamara and McCaffrey range. I think he's an absolute beast through the air. I've seen on the Pat McAfee show, Aaron Rodgers talks all the time about his running backs, and he was talking about how Aaron is able to run these crazy routes that no other running back he's ever had is able to do before. And I remember that he's ran a couple seam routes on 40-yard bombs where they're just throwing it up against him and a linebacker, and he's just out muscling him in the air. It's pretty cool to watch. So I think if he can get those third downs, like I think he will, then I think his ceiling is up there with Cook and McCaffrey, to be honest. And we all know he's got the goal line ability. I don't think Davante Adams is going to consistently get 18 touchdowns in a year, right? On 12 and a half games. That's just not going to always happen. So I think it's bound for some regression to that season before where he had over 20 touchdowns on the ground. Adam, who do you
got? Here at number 7, I have Ezekiel Elliott. For me, Ezekiel Elliott just has a lot of question marks, even though I'm pretty sure he was my fantasy number 1 running back last year. So the little slight to him, but I just have some questions along the offensive line. Is everything going to click the way it did? Probably. So, but I still feel like he's a back that's not going to be taken maybe right away, that you can get later on. But for me, it's just more questions along the board with that offensive line. Like Tyron Smith is getting old, like Connor Williams and Tyler Biadasz and Zach Martin's great. Is La'el Collins injured? I saw something about La'el Collins maybe being injured. If he's not, it's good. Either way, I still have questions. Through the entire process, is Dak going to be as good as he was before? Probably. Is the Cowboys going to be as good as they were with Travis Frederick in those rookie years? I don't think so. But he's another running back that you could take with extremely high upside. And he could be easily the best running back throughout the entire year. No question. And if that happens, I wouldn't even blink an eye. That wouldn't surprise me at all. But for me, I just take him a little bit lower with the question marks and how that offense is going to work throughout the season.
Awesome. So with the number 8th running back, I actually have a little bit of another contrarian pick. I have David Montgomery, running back out of Chicago. He was the number 4 running back last year, having 264.8 points, which honestly isn't a crazy number. Honestly, that on any other fantasy year, that's probably not all that good. But for last year, he was the number 4 running back. They're getting Tyreek Cohen back, which scares me a little bit. But they also, Chicago showed that they were willing to trade Tyreek Cohen for the Carson Wentz trade, or for maybe adding him to the Russell Wilson trade before both of those fell through, which makes me think maybe they don't like Cohen all that much. Montgomery flashed in his second year, kind of showing that he might be the best running back from the 2019 draft class. He's nearly got breakaway speed. He has shown that he can do it, but I don't know if he can do it consistently. So that's kind of a question mark for me. But in terms of goal line touches, I think he's the guy there. And one more quick thing. They added a tackle in the draft, Tevin Jenkins, who's an absolute monster. He's going to definitely open up holes in the run game for Montgomery, and I think that was honestly a steal of a draft. Bears had a very solid draft. Dan, who is your number 8 running back?
So this is where it starts to get a little less easy for me. All these guys have question marks, but I'm going to go with Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler last year played in 10 games and only had 1 rushing touchdown and 2 receiving touchdowns. There's no way that happens again. That is just physically impossible for a running back that gets 18.1 touches per game. He gets about 7 looks in the pass game every single game. Justin Herbert, as we saw, especially towards the end of the year, really fell in love with Austin Eckler. He got 16 targets in 1 game as a running back. That is absurd. He's averaging 53 yards on the ground per game and 41 almost through the air. So about 91 yards or 94 yards total per game. So I think if he can just, beat out Josh Kelly on the goal line touches, that's all you really need from him. That's the only part of his game that's missing is just those touchdowns. So if he can beat out Josh Kelly and whoever else they throw in his way, then he's going to be probably a top 5 running back by the end of the year. Adam, what do you got?
Here at number 8, I have Nick Chubb. I really like Nick Chubb for multiple reasons why I like Derrick Henry. You're going to get a consistent runner. Yeah, okay, he's not going to catch the ball. Is that a downgrade? A huge downside? Yeah, but at least he's going to get consistent touches. He's probably always going to get those yards. And the Browns might have one of the best offensive lines in the league. With Jedrick Willis Jr. at left tackle, Joel Benito at left guard, J.C. Treader, Wyatt Teller, Jack Conklin. That's a very solid offensive line. He's going to get those goal line touches, going to get those touchdowns. And I think the offense, it's Baker, and then it's kind of Nick Chubb. And then, can Baker hit those wide receivers? If not, then it's going to be Nick Chubb ground game with those big offensive linemen. So I kind of have Nick Chubb a little bit higher up here just because I feel like he has a really high floor. And you know what you're going to get with Nick Chubb. Maybe not as like an RB1 that you're extremely happy with, but an RB1 where you draft, like if you're in a snake draft and you have the last pick in the first round, you get like Nick Chubb and then like another solid running back right there after it. So like a good 1-2 running back punch. So I just like Nick Chubb with a very high floor as a running back in the late first, early second round of the draft.
And now with the number 9 running back for our list, I'm going to start off with Austin Eckler for the same reasons that Dan said. Ton of targets. Goal line work needs some help, but I think it's going to help now that they got a new head coach in there. Anthony Lynn was right there with Adam Gase in terms of worst head coaches. Might have been worse. Depends who you ask. So I think that's going to be a huge help getting a whole new scheme in there. Herbert probably is going to regress a little bit. I don't see him throwing for 30 plus touchdowns again. However, that can mean more touchdowns on the ground for the run game. Hopefully it doesn't go to Kelly. Hopefully it's to Eckler. Honestly, out of this whole list, he's probably the most slept on running back. I don't think people really know him out of Chargers, outside of like the Chargers organization and a few diehard fantasy players, but he's a beast. He was taking touches from Melvin Gordon when Melvin Gordon was still there in San Diego before they moved to Los Angeles. So, I mean, I like Eckler here at 9. He could definitely have the upside to be a top 5 running back. Just not sure what's going to happen with the goal line touches, but I mean, Eckler's a beast. Dan, who is your number 9 running back?
So my number 9 running back is going to be Nick Chubb. I believe Nick Chubb. I know we said Derrick Henry was the best pure runner in the league before, but I actually think it's Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb averaged 90 rushing yards a game on about 17.33 total touches. He had 5.62 yards per attempt, which is by far the best out of any running back. With enough touches to be factored into that. Obviously, receiving game, huge issue. And another issue that no one really talks about is Kareem Hunt, just in the goal line, actually. I think it's getting resolved. Chubb finished the season with 12 rushing touchdowns in 12 games, which is great. But I know at the beginning of the season, they were set on Hunt being the goal line back. And there's multiple games where he had most of the red zone touches. There was a game where Hunt actually had 6 out of 6 red zone or goal line touches. Sorry. But I think towards the end of the season, Chubb had I believe it was a touchdown or more in like every single one of the last 7 games. So I think they figured that out. I think he has very untapped potential. I mean, it's sad to say if Kareem Hunt goes down because he's not going to even if Kareem goes down, he's probably not going to get the pass work, which is what he needs to be, a top 5 running back. So I think he's going to finish the season as, a top 10 running back, but probably not much higher. Adam, what do you got?
At number 9, I also have Austin Eckler. Huge upside when it comes to pass catching back. Probably one of the better pass catching backs in the league. Austin Eckler's been there for many years. I feel like in the Charger organization, he's an extremely talented player. With the new head coach, as Richie mentioned, I feel like they're going to get him involved in that offense. Hopefully use him to take a little bit of load off Justin Herbert and use him as like a safety blanket for him. Having a running back that you can, run the ball with and catch the ball as a safety blanket for a young quarterback that's dependable, that's going to be great. That offensive line is also really solid with the addition of Rashawn Slater. You got Corey Lindsey at center, and you got Brian Balag at left tackle. So it's great, players for him to run in between to hopefully get those touchdowns on the ground, regardless if Kelly's going to take them or not. I feel like they're still going to be there for him to get. And the touchdowns in the air are always going to be there for Eckler. I feel like he's going to be utilized even more throughout the air this season. Just even just lining up as a pure wide receiver in certain packages, just to use mismatches against certain type of packages that defenses are throwing towards the Chargers. So it's really going to be interesting to see how he's used with the new coaching staff. But I feel like his upside, because he's a pass catching back, almost a pure pass catching back, it seems. At least that's where his upside lies. So it's going to be fun to watch him, and he's great upside, depending on where you draft.
Very true. And now, with our final running back, our 10th running back on our list, I have Cleveland's Nick Chubb. For the same exact reasons you guys have said before, it's going to be the second year under Stefanski's scheme. Odell's coming back, which should allow more two deep looks from the safeties, open up the box a little bit. Hopefully, Chubb can play a full 16 games this year. That was the only reason why he wasn't in contention for being, a top 10 plus running back last year. Similar to what Dan said about Hunt. Hunt does get the red zone touches, gets more of the receiving work. We'll see what happens with that, but Chubb has all the upside in the world. I don't know if I'm ready to say he's the best ground game running back just yet, just because Henry stays healthy, gets the touches, and produces. But he's right up there with them, no doubt about it. He's my running back 10. Definitely could be interchanged, like Dan said before, with any of these guys. After you get past like the top 4 or 5, it's really just preference and what you think about, how you think about each player and their scheme. But Dan, who is your final running back?
So the final guy on my list is Jonathan Taylor. I know a lot of people have him higher than I do. To be honest, looking at the stats in relation to Nick Chubb, he is dead even in every category or slightly above him, such as in targets per game. He gets an extra target per game. Rushing yards per attempt, he gets a little less, but he gets slightly more total touches per game. So they're very similar players, but the thing is, he actually gets the goal line touches like all to himself. I just think he's a little worse than Nick Chubb, which is why Nick Chubb's ahead of him. But he honestly, he has all the opportunity. It's his backfield. I know Nyheim Hines takes a little bit of the, not even a little bit, a decent amount of the passing work. But I think with Carson Wentz there, it's different. It's going to be a much different offense than Philip Rivers. Philip Rivers was dunked to Nyheim Hines and just not really go deep at all. Not too many red zone opportunities. I think with Carson Wentz there, I know a lot of people hate him. I think he still has a lot left in the tank. If this offense can just be any type of functional, we could see, type of like Jordan Howard numbers on the goal line, stuff like that you saw in Philadelphia. But yeah, I think the O line's great. Quentin Nelson, they got the big hog mollies in there. They're just 2 years ago we were saying this is the best O line in the league, and now we're kind of just forgetting about that a little bit. So I do think he has a lot of untapped potential. Plus he's just a freak athlete too, so that's nice on top of that. What do you got, Adam?
My final running back, I have David Montgomery. With the lack of commitment to Tariq Cohen, the fact that he had 21 targets per game last year, I believe he had 4.5 receiving targets, which I feel like is kind of surprising for David Montgomery. I feel like you wouldn't think of him to have, almost 5 catches per game, or at least 5 targets to the air. And I think because he's such a complete running back, that he's gonna get more of those targets. As Richie mentioned before, Chicago had one of the best drafts this year, if not the best draft besides maybe like Miami or some other teams if you go down the list. But Greg Little, Justin Fields, those are building blocks for the future that David Montgomery, who's a young running back, has the opportunity to play with. The tackle is definitely going to play soon. Justin Fields, he might not play right away, but he has the opportunity to build chemistry there with David Montgomery, which is going to be fun to watch. I like David Montgomery. I always have. I think he is the best running back out of his draft class by far. And He is a really solid all-around running back that you can take later in the draft and almost be comfortable with him being your number one back. And I think his pass catching upside is going to be more prevalent this season. I think he might be closer to averaging maybe 7 attempts through the air per game this year.
Awesome. So that'll be our top 10 running backs for the 2021 fantasy football season. Guys, do you have anything else to add? Any last minute thoughts?
If you liked it, leave a like, sub to the channel, turn post notifications on, get all the info from us. Adam, anything?
Do you guys have any sleepers or someone you wanted to rank higher real quick? I had Miles Sanders a little high just because he had 18 attempts per game last year, and I feel like, even though Philadelphia's a running back by committee, Miles Sanders has huge upside. He's, one of the players that can kind of score a touchdown wherever he is on the field. So I almost have Miles Sanders here at 10, so I definitely think he's someone that could almost have RB1 and definitely high RB2 upside. Anybody you guys have?
I got Melvin Gordon. I actually mentioned this in our sleepers video, but I have him just outside of the top 10. He's got the backfield to himself. Lindsey's gone in Houston. He's a great receiving threat that's gonna come back to help them if they somehow get Rodgers. That would be amazing for that offense as a whole. But yeah, Melvin Gordon.
By the way, those sleepers videos, one for Montgomery and one for Melvin Gordon, will be dropping very soon within the coming days. So stay tuned for those. And a very, very weird player here that I have is Mike Davis now in Atlanta. He was like the guy. He was chubby CMC when CMC was down. His stats were incredible. I'm very willing to admit that. He had under 4 yards per carry. However, he has shown that he can do everything. Unfortunately, I mean, he's not even like a crazy athlete, but he can be your goal line guy. He can catch passes for you. And Atlanta doesn't really have anyone that's too crazy there. I kind of wanted them to attack running back early in this draft, but then they didn't. So maybe they believe in Mike Davis, maybe they don't. I just remember Todd Gurley getting a few like short yard rushing touchdowns last season, and I can see Mike Davis doing the same thing. And Gurley actually ended up not doing too well in that category, but Davis, with the amount of workload he got, was a top 12 running back last year in terms of fantasy points. So he's like just some random guy that I got. But like we said before, don't forget to drop a like, comment if you guys have your own lists. We would love to see them. I'm sure we're going to be doing more videos similar to this in the future, so we can do more position groups, maybe even redo this list, later in the off season when we kind of know injuries and how teams are looking in terms of after training camp. But this has been Do No Right Sports. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Peace.
Can never ever find the right words, and there's no way this is real life. There's no telling you're the right girl, so I can only say that it feels right.